One of the best CEOs I know recently recommended I read this book, 13 Days. It's a memoir by Robert Kennedy about the Cuban Missile Crisis. For 13 days, two superpowers stood face to face, armed with nuclear weapons, deciding if they wanted to start World War III. And for 13 days, John F. Kennedy made decisions that had implications for every human on the planet. That is pressure. You see, pressure is like the ultimate test of skill and self-mastery. When the bright lights are on, are you as good as you think you are, and do you have the self-control to use those skills to succeed? Unfortunately, most of us never learn how to perform under pressure. No one teaches us. So when we reach adulthood and we're put in pressure situations for the first time, we often fail. I remember there was this time when I was in flight school. I was about 6 months into training, and the air traffic controller told us there's a lot of traffic in the area. You're gonna have to be careful. For a student pilot, that means one thing. This is gonna be a high pressure flight. So we take off, we reach elevation, and I'm turning the plane to the left. And then all of a sudden, I hear the air traffic controller yell to me, 13 Delta, turn left now. I was already turning left, but I panicked under the pressure and I turned the plane to the right. And then right out in front of me, I saw a Gulfstream jet scream by just a few hundred yards from the plane. I landed the plane, I got out, and I quit flight school that day. It was like a mirror was put up in front of me and I was exposed. I was not skilled in managing pressure. But after having some time to reflect, I've realized that avoiding high pressure situations was making me settle for a smaller life with smaller goals. And I simply can't accept that. Neither should you. So I'm creating this video to share with you the 3 most important lessons that I've learned about performing under pressure. And I can't believe I'm about to actually say this, but to put these learnings to the test, I'm going back to flight school. Even though the last time I was in a plane, we almost crashed, I know that I have to face this head on, because learning how to perform under pressure might be one of the most important skills I ever learned. The first step to performing 100 times better under pressure is to get comfortable with the pressure. So you need exposure to it, lots of it. Whatever skill you're trying to master, you need to practice it under the influence of pressure. One of the easiest ways to simulate pressure while you're practicing is to grab a camera and record yourself while you practice. It's gonna feel like an audience is watching you. And I know this sounds crazy, this works. This will desensitize you to pressure. So with flying, I've always felt an immense amount of pressure when talking to the air traffic controller.
13 Delta, Scottsdale Tower, make left close traffic, runway 3, clear for takeoff.
Runway 3, clear for takeoff, Cessna 6513 Delta.
All of the other pilots are listening in, and their safety and your safety all depends on you getting it right. So in anticipation of going back to flight school, I'm practicing my tower communications in front of a camera. Look at this moment. This is real pressure. Georgetown Tower, Georgetown Tower, Cessna 1232 Golf at George. And I know that looked totally scripted. It was that bad, but I promise you, that is where I started. And after a lot of days of practicing in front of a camera, I started nailing it. Georgetown ground, Cessna 1232 Golf at Genesis with information Bravo, ready to taxi for an eastbound departure. Run if required. And the camera's just a place to start. The more realistic you can make the pressure feel, of course, the better it's gonna be. So you can add a countdown clock, or you can do it in front of your friends. Even one of the greatest speakers of all time, Martin Luther King, practiced the I Have a Dream speech in front of a smaller crowd in Savannah, Georgia, in anticipation of the pressure. And if you do this over and over again, your relationship with pressure will totally change. Rather than it flooding in like an army that you're defenseless against, you'll be desensitized to pressure. It just won't feel like a big deal because you've practiced under pressure hundreds of times. Principle 2, play to win, not avoid losing. Once you have a lot of exposure to pressure, you're gonna start learning things about yourself, like what triggers your pressure and what causes you to underperform. Let me give you an example. Earlier this year, I joined a public speaking course. So we're working on a script and my coach is really forcing me to think on my feet. I'm writing things down, I'm speaking it out loud, but I'm not really liking how things are coming out. He makes a suggestion and I say, oh yeah, perfect. Let me work on adding that in later, and I try to deflect his attention to something else. But he's not taking the bait. He says, I'm not letting you out of this. See how uncomfortable you are? Whoa. It was like the room was closing in on me and I wanted out. And so I start thinking to myself, how screwed up is my thinking? I'm literally paying this guy. He wants to see me succeed. And I'm more concerned that he thinks I'm not smart on my feet than I am about creating something totally awesome. And I begin to realize that every pressure moment I've ever been in, my entire life, whether it be a sales meeting, hey everybody, thanks for coming, playing baseball as a kid, or trying to land an airplane, I have been more concerned about not embarrassing myself than I have trying to be great, trying to rise to the occasion, and that is self-sabotaging. There's a really great 2009 study coming out of the University of Texas that highlights this point, called Choking and Excellence at the Free Throw Line. So what these researchers did was they looked at the performance of NBA players at the free throw line during the regular season, and on average, these players hit 76% of their shots. That's the control in the experiment. But when the game was down to the final seconds, and a team was down by 1 point, meaning the player was shooting to avoid losing the game, their average plummets down to 69%. And then when the game is down to the final seconds, but the game is tied, meaning the player is shooting to win the game, their shooting average improves and they hit 78% of their shots. NBA players are better when they are shooting to win the game versus avoid losing the game. So when you are in a high pressure situation, you need to ask yourself, am I playing to win or am I playing to avoid losing? And if you're playing to avoid losing, to avoid embarrassing yourself, you need to reframe the pressure situation. You need to say, this is a challenge, this is an opportunity to be great. Let's see what I'm capable of. Okay, so the last step to performing 100 times better under pressure is to learn how to respond to pressure. There's a common trait among people who are truly great under pressure. They don't react to their emotions, they respond. They're self-aware enough to know that their first reflex might not always be the best decision forward. In any high pressure moment, you want to feel like you are in control of the situation, that physically and mentally you are acting in your best interest and you are not just reacting to emotions. One of the best ways to feel that you are in control of the pressure situation is to use the first feelings of pressure as a cue. It's a signal to initiate my routine. Before every free throw shot that Steve Nash took, he takes 2 imaginary shots, thinks of the thousands of times he succeeded, and then he shoots. He's not immune to pressure because he plays in the NBA. He still feels those thousands of eyes on him. So he uses pressure as a signal and he initiates his pressure routine. That routine, it's a response. That's Steve Nash taking control, and that sense of control will follow him throughout the pressure situation. You need to create a routine that works for you depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Today's a great example for me to share my pressure routine with you because today, for the first time in 2 years, I'm going back up in an airplane and I'm learning how to fly. And I'll tell you, I feel pretty nervous. I feel the pressure coming on, but that's okay. That's the signal. Now it's time to initiate the routine. First, I try to slow my brain with breathing exercises to clear any racing thoughts. Generally, it's 4 in and 6 out. Next, I evaluate the pressure situation and tell myself, this is a chance to be great. This is an opportunity. This should be fun. Let's rise to the occasion and try to be great. So to continue to remind myself throughout the pressure moment, I'm actually writing this into the flight notepad. This is something I'll see throughout the flight so that I'll continuously be reminded. Third, our brains run on glucose or sugar, so it's always a good idea to try to eat something sweet before a high pressure moment. Honey, grapes, whatever. Because if you're low in blood sugar, your brain is gonna fatigue, and it's just not gonna wanna perform at its best or make decisions. Lastly, I decide on an anchor word that I will use through the pressure moment. This is one single word I'll use through the pressure experience to refrain from overthinking. It's like I consolidate all of the nervous thoughts into one word. The word I often repeat through the pressure moment is slow, because as they say in the military, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So with that, there's only one thing left to do. Time to get back into a plane and talk to air traffic control. Wish me luck.
Georgetown grounds, Cessna 1232 Golf at Genesis with information Juliet. Request taxi for an eastbound departure. Run up required.
Cool. At ground 621 Kilo, can we set up flight following?
Georgetown Tower, Cessna 1232 Golf, holding short of runway 18 for an eastbound departure.
3 full throttle, right? Foot down, nice. Airspeed is alive. All right, start pulling back.